Hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time to see what's making the headlines then with the Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Telegraph's deputy comment editor, Annabel Denham. Welcome to both of you. Kevin's finding it a bit chilly in the studio, but we'll see. It is chilly, yes, I like it chilly. Anyway, front pages, let's take a look, shall we? And the Metro reacts to the Prime Minister's announcement of special legislation to exonerate wrongfully convicted sub-postmasters with the headline, Justice by Special Delivery. Justice is also the word that features on the front of the Daily Express. This is the front of The Guardian, then, which says that hundreds of victims of the scandal will now have their convictions overturned. Same story for the FT, which says the proposed law could be brought before Parliament within weeks. Daily Mail, though, says hundreds of victims who were never actually charged now face an uphill battle to get the same compensation as everybody else. The Telegraph reports that Post Office investigators were offered cash bonuses for every postmaster convicted. Daily Star launches a campaign for the man who led the fight against the Post Office, Alan Bates, to be awarded a knighthood for his achievement. And the Eye says there are growing demands for Fujitsu, the computer firm at the heart of the scandal, to be punished for its failings. A reminder, by scanning the QR code that you'll see on screen, you can check out the front pages for yourself of tomorrow's newspapers while you listen to our guests. So let's go to Kevin and Annabel. Yes, goodness me, clean sweep there. Not surprising, perhaps. Major change announced by the Prime Minister today, and the Metro calling it justice by special delivery, Kevin.
Yeah, it's a clever headline. That's what it was. The announcement, the Prime Minister's questions about a law that will exonerate, he said, quash the convictions of the 700 plus. Some people are a bit queasy about that because of Parliament interfering in the judicial process and the courts. And also there is likely along the way to be a few people who may have had sticky fingers being cleared too. But the gravity of the miscarriage of justice is such, I think it justifies what is happening. But I still feel we're in the sort of end of the beginning rather than beginning of the end, because there are all those cases going to be heard, all those stories. And, of course, you go on to who at the Post Office, who at Fujitsu. Maybe we should call it the Fujitsu Post Office scandal rather than just the Post Office scandal. You know, who knew, who covered it up, and then what happens to them?
Yes, you feel like you're midway through the forensic unpicking of what happened, who knew and how it happened. We'll certainly come on to that Telegraph story shortly. In the meantime, though, the government had different options, didn't they? Either expedite through the courts or do this special legislation through Parliament, which, as Kevin has pointed out, has made people a little bit queasy about effectively parliamentarians deciding who, you know, the innocence of people.
Of course, this is an unprecedented move, I believe, and it has left legal experts feeling perhaps awkward, a bit uncomfortable, a bit queasy. As Kevin says, there'll be this bill in the next few weeks. There are these concerns about that, you know, that erosion of the separation between Parliament and the judiciary as a consequence. And let's not forget that a day ago, Alex Chalk, the Justice Secretary, was hinting that all sorts of options would be explored, exhausted even before the government resorted to this measure. Well, they certainly exhausted those options rather quickly, because here we are at lunchtime today, Rishi Sunak stood up and made that announcement. But it is some relief, at least for those who have been wrongly convicted in this terrible miscarriage of justice. But as you say, there are so many more questions that need to be answered, questions which haven't even been asked. There has been so much obfuscation, so many sort of tactics of delay, people who have sat on their hands, and we just don't know the full scale of it yet. But certainly those victims of this outrageous injustice, this scandal, one hopes.
You see the power of a good TV drama, which is what's happened here. Mr. Bates versus the Post Officers has just put rocket fuel under his.
And many of us wept watching it. I mean, you know, it's really emotional.
It was
experience
because it humanised it, and you see that the cases, they're all people, they're all flesh and blood with their own stories and their families, and the tales of how they were ruined, rather than just seeing large numbers, more than 700 convictions. And you think that's absolutely terrible. But then behind those 700 are, men and women who've been to hell and back. But
it's extraordinary, like you said, how quickly the government machine can click into gear when the incentives, when the impetus, and when the public pressure demands it. But this has been rumbling on for years, 25 years. These people have been waiting for justice.
It's had a lot of media coverage along the way. Computer Weekly and Private Eye, Daily Mail have done a lot. You've done it in Sky, other broadcasters. You've done it in Telegraph. We've done it in the Mirror. It's all been there. And of course, there have been big court cases, like 2019, Landmark, when the High Court said that these convictions are unsafe because the Horizon IT isn't foolproof. People can access it who aren't postmasters and so on and so on and so on. But it is the TV drama that's just captured the public imagination. And Kevin Hollinrake, the Post Office Minister, said actually, it has played a role, because all of a sudden the pressure is built on the government, and governments do respond to pressure and public will. They can resist it sometimes foolishly, and other times they see how the wind is blowing and they act swiftly.
It's extraordinary, though, the Post Office Minister this morning saying that there had been trial by media, that in some way he felt that perhaps the government was being poorly treated through this. Well, in fact, the opposite is the case. It's been the media which has helped apply.
In this case,
But we're still in the messy phase, aren't we? Because there are different groups. There are those who were convicted. There are those whose lives were ruined even without a conviction as well. The original 555 who won a case, but then lost a lot of that money because they had to have investors to help them bring the case in the first place. So they need extra compensation. And there are those who lost their home, their business. We had people on earlier in the UK tonight who, one of them was sectioned through anxiety because of this.
Horrific.
And another one who had to tell her children, I'm going, but I may not come home today. Eventually got a suspended sentence. But, the pain is very real. And actually, many of them want to see their convictions quashed in the court of law, which may not now happen under this blanket legislation.
I know. They were dragged to court and found guilty when they were innocent. And so I understand why they'd want to go back and, I don't know, stand in the dock and be told you're innocent, grotesque miscarriage of justice, you're free to walk away without a stain on your good character.
There was never a case to answer
and so on. And that adequate justice had been served, because at present they are going to sign this written statement to say that they are innocent. But
which they find, many of them find an affront as well. Daily Mail says there's a battle over the £75,000 deal. Many of them saying they want to hold out for more because of the implications to their families. So, as I said, it's the messy phase.
Well, it is. I mean, how much money can compensate you if you've been wrongly convicted? Your family might have turned against you. You've been screamed at in the streets. You've lost your home. Your good name is gone. You've been sectioned, or those who took their lives. Probably no amount of money, but the system will have to come up with a figure, as it usually does. But if somebody gets 600,000, says it isn't enough, who are we to argue with them? They may not get any more, but you would understand why they feel it isn't adequate.
So let's go to the Daily Telegraph, which has sort of substantive new information, effectively. The suggestion that the Post Office handed out bonuses for convictions, and this is part of evidence that has been handed to the inquiry, which resumes on Thursday, set up back in 2020. We heard from the Post Office Minister, expected to finish taking evidence at the end of this year and then report. But specifically, Annabelle, what is this suggesting then?
Sure. So this is the story that Post Office investigators were being given cash bonuses for every sub-postmaster who was convicted during this scandal. It's a breaking news story which Alan Bates has, said highlights the horrendous culture at the Post Office. And I think, it speaks to the incentives throughout this scandal. And it's something that I've long thought about, is what motivated people, what motivated Post Office prosecutors to go after, the salt of the earth, sub-postmasters who are working in these local communities, who were pillars of those local communities. What was it about human instinct that meant that there was such inertia in handling it, that allowed it to go on for 25 years and so on and so forth. And, this, unfortunately, in some ways speaks to speaks to that and the way in which the Post Office had been run. I think readers are going to be incensed when they see this.
There's an investigator, Gary Thomas, worked 2000 to 2012 in the investigations unit, who's sort of blown the whistle on this at the inquiry. But emails showed he and others were referring to sub-postmasters and mistresses in general as crooks, as if they were all being seen as guilty. Now, I think it gets to the heart, in a way, of how you incentivise employees. And if you think, right, payment by results, which means if you're an investigator, you've got to be nailing people. And I think it's the wrong way. It's the wrong way to do it. It's right, like you don't want traffic wardens to be paid how many parking tickets they give out, because otherwise there's a incentive them from sometimes, should I give them a ticket or not? Well, I'll give them a ticket because my pay depends on it. And I think it's a wider problem in the economy, but I think in particular here it's wrong. It's as if the Post Office thought its investigators would be lazy unless they were getting them to be pulling in lots of sub-postmasters and mistresses.
It also shows the ferociousness of the commitment of the Post Office to, to find these people as well, doesn't it? And we know that they were locked out of their Post Office offices and could not go back in to find information that might have exonerated them. So they couldn't go back and help their defence.
If the Post Office wanted to defend and protect the legitimacy of the entire system, then I would applaud that.
And where was the forensics going through their bank accounts to find out where the supposed 36 grand had stolen and gone?
But you'd have to have an IT system that can stand up and be accountable itself, and this one wasn't.
Well, there are obviously questions to be asked over the independence of the Post Office, the fact that it was able to bring these private prosecutions. I think our faith in the justice system has been shattered reading about this story. The fact that there appears to have been the presumption of guilt, like you say, the assumption that these people were crooks. The onus was on them to prove their innocence. The fact that there was that legal quirk, the change about 25 years ago, which meant that computers were assumed to be accurate and the sub-postmasters were then in a position where they had to try and prove that they were faulty.
Yes,
everything
the other way around.
had been inverted.
Yeah. So the Daily Star, obviously, talking about a potential knighthood for Mr Bates. He was asked about that today, suggesting it was not about me. But, of course, Paula Venables has given back her CBE, although, of course, many people pointing out Paula Venables is not the CEO the Post Office has had during the, 25 years of this. But, ultimately... eventually, he said that the next book would be a holiday for Mr Bates, because that's not yet come and the fight's not yet over, obviously. And as we can see, the fight's not yet over, is it really?
Yeah, well, he was offered an OBE, but he turned it down because she had a CBE. You could quite quickly give him that OBE back. You can do quick honours if you wish. Did you want a knighthood? Well, I don't really particularly like the honours system the way it is, but if anyone deserves something, I would have thought it would be him. But will that then create divisions with other postmasters and mistresses? Does he want one? I think the Mirror's got a campaign as well. I think we might have just been going for a CBE, though. The Star's gone for a full knighthood.
He'll be in the laws before we know.
The Telegraph will be for a peerage.
Well, I think it's, many decades of hard labour that he's put in, isn't it, really, as we've seen. Yeah. Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me once again, Kev Maguire and Annabel Denham. Welcome back to both of you. Annabel, should we go to the Financial Times now and the situation in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, indeed, with obviously warnings now from the US and the UK about retaliation should these Houthi attacks continue. I mean, are they boxing themselves in a corner when we actually should now start to anticipate military intervention?
Well, look, 12 countries issued a joint statement condemning the attacks. I think there's a history here of the West saying that these cannot continue, and yet they are indeed continuing. US and British forces shot down 21 drones and missiles fired by the Houthis on Tuesday night. A very strong sense now that this is escalating. Extraordinary picture on board the HMS Diamond of staff on board wearing anti-flash hoods worn when at the highest state of alert in order to prevent burns should the ships be hit, the experiences of these officers on board are absolutely unimaginable. They are in this constant state of alert where they will have seconds in order to prepare for incoming missiles. But there are so many questions to be asked, not least about the willingness of Iran, which is engaged in these proxy conflicts through groups like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, which it's backing financially, in terms of how far it is actually willing to go and whether it would enter into some kind of direct conflict with the Western alliance. And at the moment, there are some doubts over that.
Yes, and the question is, what do you attack and where do you attack? If you attack Yemen, do you re-inflame that war, which is going through a slightly quieter period, which has caused utter devastation to the people of Yemen, hasn't it?
No, absolutely. In Saudi Arabia...
Starvation of children.
Yeah, and Saudi Arabia was using British arms, warplanes to attack schools, markets...
which is your proxy,
a lot of Houthis.
Saudis versus the Iranians.
No, absolutely. Yeah. It's a terrible civil war there. And it's a hard judgment call for the UK, US and others. You've got to show some force, but if you show too much force, do you just escalate it? But you need a deterrent. If they're going to keep firing at shipping in that area, then you're going to have to somehow stop. And you don't just fire at the drones and the missiles. You've got to stop where they're being launched from. But that is an escalation you hope can be avoided. Whether it can or not, I don't know. But you got a feel for the crew there, as you say, on the British ship and the other ships when they know the dangers.
Yeah, it's at the bottom of the front page of The Guardian as well, quoting Grant Shapps, the UK Defence Secretary, telling people to watch this space at a press briefing, directly accusing Iran of helping the Yemeni rebels, if you've got The Guardian. Yeah, not as dramatic a picture, certainly there. But anyway, we watch this space, is all we need to say about that one. In the meantime, Telegraph, Labour claims to want to end the nanny state. In what way? To protect Britain's youth under a raft of reforms, Annabelle?
Yes, well, this is right. So Keir Starmer is going to be announcing his child health action plan. Today he's written an opinion piece in The Guardian condemning the Tories' record with children, the fact that a growing number of pupils are leaving school who are obese, concerns about overweight children. Of course, this story, which we read about a few months ago on supervised toothbrushing, has reared its head, having been quite ridiculed at the time. And the Tories have accusing Labour of bringing Britain back into the nanny state. But I think that's...
These will be all these Tories brought up by nannies and employing nannies, like Jake Rees-Mogg. Oh, come on.
Run out of time. We'll talk more about that one later.